Virtuality is a concept in philosophy elaborated by French thinker Gilles Deleuze. Deleuze used the term virtual to refer to an aspect of reality that is ideal but nonetheless real. This understanding of the virtual as something that is as if it were real, and the everyday use of the term to indicate what is virtually so, but not so in fact. A modal distinction proposed by French philosopher Gilles Deleuze as a replacement for the problematic real possible distinction more commonly used in philosophy. The possible is a bad concept according to Deleuze because it presupposes that everything that is real must also be possible, which rules out a great number of conceptual inventions, consigning them to the ontologically lesser category of the unreal or impossible. Freedom of actuality, freeing virtual things from their impossibility. Effects from the virtual conceptions can be very real or even actual. The actual and virtual are both fully real, one has concrete existence and the other doesn't. When a perceived object is passed through the filter of light, both real and actual things, the moment it reaches our eyes, actual physical subjectivity is introduced. Perception changes the subject. Then the actual world, limited and changed by our imperfect eyes, is passed on to the brain, a physical and actual object, as the eye, that introduces personal subjectivity of experience. You could also argue that since the processing of raw eye data is done in the brain, also it introduces both physical subjectivity of transformation and personal subjectivity. Together, the eyes, or indeed any of the other senses, and the brain form the filter of subjectivity that separate human experience from the actual world, all completely real, yet virtual. The lenses can also move through the virtual world, though they remain bound to the actual world as they are actual and physical, not inherently pass through themselves, perceiving the world directly but from a more subjective point of view. Personal and universal subjectivity and objectivity. I somehow feel as though this theory is advocating for a sort of actual supremacy, as if the virtual is worse in any way. I just want to demonstrate that all of human experience takes place in a more or less virtual space. I'm not yet sure how the act of perceiving the actual can happen from a more or less virtual point of view. I see the brain lens moving through the virtual realm as in the 3D scene, but what exactly does this mean? Is the view somehow more clouded? This would mean that some views are worse than others. I think being closer to the actual world is not better, but closer inherently feels as if it is. What effects do drugs have on the lens? Does it move the lens? Distort it maybe? Just change it? I think the lens might not be what is moving. It stays where it is, always at the border between virtual and actual. It simply changes the lens, being more or less engaged in certain aspects of filtration. Is there a point where the virtual escapes the real? I think there's a point where the virtual is completely detached from the actual. Both the virtual and the actual world infinitely spread out and wrap around each other. See it in this way. From the virtual perspective, it envelops from all sides the actual, us interacting with it through the border, sense-brain lens/lens of subjectivity. The virtual expands infinitely in all directions, the actual expands inward infinitely. From the other side it is the same way. The actual world envelops the virtual world completely and expands outward, while the virtual expands inward. I think both these ways of display can be used in different scenarios. In the case of the personal virtuality, it is more useful to see the world as an object that one is looking outwards at, as we do in the physical world, while the universal virtuality, the virtual experience of all people, and creatures possibly, envelop the actual world. One can also see the world as two shapes, infinitely stretching out along the x-axis, separated by the lens, both contained within another infinitely large shape, the real.